All right, hey Derek, so I'm on the other side of the camera here today, but we're doing a little chat over coffee. This is Dan, Director of Inbound Marketing with Deputy. I've got Derek, Enterprise of VP Solutions, and I wanted to do this chat because I was doing a little bit of content around the California overtime law changes and things, and I came across this case called Troester versus Starbucks. And I realized there's some very, very key implications in that case that probably matter to hourly employers.
Yeah, so the case basically, imagine you are in a cafe. This particular coffee chain is well known. What was taking place is that the shift supervisor at the end of the day was going to their computer and actually clocking out and then spending about 10 minutes shutting the lights off, shutting machines down, and locking the store up. What happened is that employee Douglas Troester actually filed a wage claim against Starbucks, indicating that that was 10 minutes of compensable time that he should have been paid. The big deal with the case is that typically these small amounts of time are considered what are called de minimis, which means they're so infrequent and irregular that they don't have to be compensated by the employer. Now, when Douglas Troester filed the case, it went up through several appeals, actually all the way up to the California Supreme Court, in which the California Supreme Court issued that the de minimis rule does not apply. One of the justices in the ruling actually indicated that a clear definition of de minimis means that the hours that, in this case, that would be considered for de minimis would be ones that are kind of occasional and not regular. In this case, if you go and clock out, and every time you clock out there are 10 minutes of work that need to be completed, then that is actually should be compensable time. That's what is at the core of the case now, and all the California employers should be aware of this.
Okay, so I think there's kind of two things in there to think about. One is the employee, and one is the employer. So you can kind of talk us through, like, you know, why this matters to employees, and then maybe why, like, employers like a Starbucks or even a small business should pay attention.
Well, look, even in this case, I don't think the Starbucks was intending to short the employee. They were relying on the de minimis rule. But you have to get in the head of a plaintiff's attorney, which I remember specifically, like, driving down the Pacific Coast Highway into, I think it was Temecula, and there are literally billboards up asking for class action lawsuits. I mean, California's a very litigious state, where these plaintiff's attorneys are just looking for these small infractions. If you get in the head of a plaintiff's attorney, they're thinking, well, that's only 10 minutes, but how many employees are there at Starbucks in that one location? And how many Starbucks are there in California? And that's where these suits sort of expand. I think, one, the employer wants to compensate the employee correctly, but needs to make sure that they are paying all the hours worked. And two, for the employer, for this particular employee, I think we calculated maybe they were shorting the employee $1,700 a year, which is not much in the grand scheme of things. It's just an accident. And I don't claim that, or I don't think anyone claimed, honestly, that Starbucks intended to short this employee. It's an error in the operational practice and the timekeeping policies of the company.
Yeah, and I think the last key takeaway here is, you know, obviously Deputy and our ability to help in these situations, especially with a Starbucks or a, you know, other franchise like that. So can you talk a little bit about that, Derek?
Look, California has a lot of layers that employers have to think about. They have specific overtime rules that are specific to the state, meal and rest break. They have certain jurisdictions that have predictable scheduling laws, and now they have to consider, obviously, this off-the-clock work. When we work with some of our customers, we will start out with a questionnaire of how they're handling these, and then we'll show them how they can automate compliance with all four of those and even some additional items, because obviously California, if you don't have these things buttoned up, these plaintiff's attorneys are absolutely asking. We've even heard some cases the plaintiff's attorneys are posting job descriptions, trying to find employees who are disgruntled with their employer, and they're going to go in and try to find any of those four things to try to find a reasonable case to file a lawsuit.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you have questions about that, drop them in the comments below, or visit deputy.com and see what we're all about. And
Cool.
Derek, thanks for your time, man.
Cool. Thanks, Dan.